Hey guys, welcome.
Hello.
Welcome to our look at Phoenix Rising. So we aren't going to cover the fluff stuff on this video, mostly because
Stuff.
yeah, it was just spoiler on it. It was pretty poor.
TLDR, not much happened.
Yeah, at least in the Phoenix Rising book, we do have we're splitting the box with a friend, and so hopefully we can look at the information in the box, and hopefully that has a little bit more expansion, I guess, on
stuff.
Expansion on what happened, because the way this book kind of reads on the fluff, it doesn't work like
it's like a whole
things
lot
like Rise of the Primarch, etc. Right?
It's like a whole lot of flashbacks. And then when it does get to the new stuff,
it glosses over it.
Very vague descriptions of things that are really,
like,
really interesting and important.
It's like, this happened. And that's,
but why?
That's all it gives you. And you're
These two people appeared. How? But why?
Yeah, it just, I don't understand. They could have done so much more with this, especially given the price point on the book.
Yeah.
It was disappointing.
There was one part that literally said, legends describe this epic thing that happened. Doesn't describe what happened.
Yeah, it's
but it does say legends describe, or legends foretold.
Highly questionable. All you get, like, I mean, all you get is...
We're just gonna rant.
Drazar, yeah, all you get with the Drazar, Jainzar stuff was they fought. That was basically the description of it. It was like, cool.
I mean, Incubi versus Howling Banshees.
No, that doesn't even talk about that. Literally, all it says is, all it comes down to is, like, the Dark Eldar tried to kill Yvraine, and it was bad. Anyway, we're gonna...
Sorry.
Hopefully
we'll get more detail and more description. A narrative would be good.
In Blood of the Phoenix, hopefully that expands on this stuff more, because honestly, we both kind of feel you could just skip this book and you would never care. As far as fluff goes.
Nothing happened.
Yeah. So instead, we're gonna if the video's out, there'll be a link in the description for the fluff discussion after we get, like I said, the Blood of the Phoenix book.
Yeah.
And that'll probably be going up in the next 3 or 4 days, depending on whenever you see this video. Or it could be out. If it's out, then just check the description. But so for this one, we're more just going to talk about some of the things that they did in the book as far as the actual armies go. So we're just going to just talk about that. We'll start off kind of talking about the Eldar. This is probably going to be on the short end for the Eldar. So if you're looking for Eldar shit, we probably aren't the good channel for that. Yeah. Neither of us play the normal Craft Worlders.
We're not super, intrigued. Well, at least I wasn't.
So basically, for the points values on all this stuff, pretty much nothing changed for your Eldar. And Banshees and Jainzar. The one new thing is there's a Chiskel weapon option for your Howling Banshees Exarch, which is an Assault 3 AP -3.
Oh, that's pretty good.
I think, Assault 3, Strength 4, AP -2, 3 shots.
Strength 4.
But it's only 12-inch range. But still, I mean, it's not bad. It's at least usable.
-2 AP.
It gives the Banshees some sort of shooting, but I don't think that's going to be quite enough to really make them great. But
they're all modeled with big swords. What do you think they're supposed to do?
Yeah, I'm sure in a pinch it might help out. So I don't want to dismiss it too much.
Overwatch, maybe?
Yeah. Jainzar kind of lost her disarming strike ability, which is weird, considering that was actually one of the few things that was good about her to begin with. That you could just, in dueling a character, say like a Smash Captain, you'd be like, no, you don't get your Thunder Hammer. So basically, she just kind of default won those fights.
Not anymore, I guess.
Yeah, now she has the Storm of Silence rule, which I'm sure you guys have seen by now. But it required. She normally has 4 attacks, but instead of that, she can say, "I get as many attacks as I have enemy models within 2 inches." But even optimistically, because she doesn't have fly or grav belt like Harlequins, or flip belt like Harlequins, optimistically she might get 5 or 6, so she gets +2 attacks if she uses it.
What if she's facing just one big dude?
Then she gets 4 attacks. Exactly. That's. I mean, realistically, I guess if you could manage to get her surrounded by infantry and fight a big dude at the same time, she could then have like 8 attacks into the character. But that seems extremely unlikely. Basically, her entire new rule relies on your opponent being dumb. Which, when you have a rule relies completely on that, it's not a good thing. Anyways, long story short, I don't want to go into too much detail with her, but more than likely, if you didn't use her before, you're not going to use her now.
No, not without that one ability to disarm.
Yeah, and if you used her before, you might not use her now, depending on your reasoning. I just don't see... I feel like when they were trying to design her, they like had this great idea of her being this horde mulching thing.
But why, though? Why horde mulching?
It would be fine if it functioned, but...
In the lore, she was fighting a big incubi dude.
Anyways, like I said, I don't know. My guess is that in their design phase, they're like, oh, let's make her have this really cool ability to let her just mulch through infantry. Because she already has decent damage, because her weapon's D3 damage, and she gets to reroll wounds. So, I don't know. And she's still okay at dealing characters, but she's not great at it. And they helped her ability to fight hordes, I guess. But, again... Even optimistically, really optimistically, you might get 10 to 12 attacks out of her, but it just relies so heavily on your opponent making a mistake that I just don't see it being good. Banshees, I already talked about. Otherwise, they're not really changed, at least as far as I can see, but again, I don't play Eldar. Power of the Aspect Shrines, this is probably where we're spending a little bit of time talking about for Eldar. I like this idea in concept because I really like out of what I do like about the Eldar, that I like the Aspect Warriors, and I'm well aware that in general they're not very good. But there are a few that you use, notably Dark Reapers, Shining Spears, and Crimson Hunters, Exarchs. Those all see some reasonable use. Dire Avengers as well. But Dire Avengers are kind of fringe. So I actually think out of these, it's overall good. You get nice little choices. I'm not going to delve into them, but overall, I think they do improve your aspect, or the power of your units. I'll talk a little bit about the ones that I actually think might get a unit from being fringe to being used. Dire Avengers specifically, they have a couple that stand out. Bladestorm, which is on a 6 to hit with a non-grenade weapon, they get an extra, it counts as 2 hits, which is pretty good, especially if you're running a larger squad of Dire Avengers. And then optionally you can get Shredding Fire, which allows any weapon fired by the Dire Avenger Exarch, except grenades, to have AP -3 and no text. So the ability basically means normally, on a shuriken weapon, it's on a 6 to hit, it's AP -3. Now it's just always AP -3, and it no longer has the additional AP on a 6 to hit because you already get it on all your shots. So since he can bring 2, Dire Avenger catapults on his own, it gives him 4 strength 4 AP -3 shots. That's pretty reasonable. Yeah. If you're trying to run small squads, if you're getting up to at least 7 Dire Avengers in a squad, then the Bladestorm's probably statistically better. It's probably close. But again, once you start taking a few casualties on that squad, which you're going to at toughness 3, 4-up saves, my personal opinion is I'd probably be taking Shredding Fire most of the time. But this does create an interesting choice, or interesting conundrum, I guess, about when you actually pick these Exarch powers. Now, it says here you choose you're supposed to note on your army roster what Exarch powers you've replaced. So to me, that indicates that you're supposed to do this at list building.
You can call that out during.
Yeah, you have to do it list building, which would mean that you shouldn't be able to look at your opponent's list and say, okay, this Exarch's going to be this, and this Exarch's going to be this, and be able to tailor it to your opponent. Because I think that would be a little bit... That would create some definite problems. It would definitely create some problems. So I do think that it just says, in that it has a small little blurb, note on your army roster any Exarch powers you have added or replaced for each aspect unit in your army. To me, that's saying you have to have done this at list creation. However, you can get around that by spending a command point. And for one command point, you can essentially choose an additional power for each Exarch. So each of the stratagems to do this are named something different based on the shrine. And I don't see anything that says you can only do this for one Exarch. So if you really wanted to, you could obviously do... the stratagem itself is once per battle, but it doesn't say it nullifies any other Exarch choices. So you could do this for your Dire Avengers and your Dark Reapers and your blah blah blah, etc. etc. That would get really expensive CP wise, of course. But if you had a couple that you wanted to tailor your list a little bit towards, you could do that, but at the expense of CP.
Yeah. Might be a fair trade depending on what you realize your opponent's bringing.
Yeah, for one CP, I don't mind it so much for that. I would take exception if you could just say, okay, let's say you brought this, so I'm gonna have this Exarch take this, and this Exarch take this, and that seems a little silly.
For free. Yeah, that'd be a little unfair.
So where this does kind of to me run into some problems is, although I'm happy overall for the Aspect Warriors, certain ones were already quite good, and I'm not really thrilled that they're buffing those. Just as an example, Dark Reapers, there are several really interesting or good ones here. Rapid shot, basically you get to shoot one extra shot from whatever weapon he shoots.
Jeez.
So if you're shooting the 2-shot star cannon or whatever, you get 3. If you're shooting the 1-shot, you get 2. Same for the missile for 2, etc. And I guess if you shot the Tempest Launcher, it'd be 2d6 plus 1. Mm-hmm. So obviously that's better with the single-shot weapons. It just gives them an additional shot.
Yeah, and those are usually pretty powerful.
Right. He also gets... Let's see. If you're using the Tempest, though, you're probably going to take Rain of Death instead, because you can reroll the dice for a number of shots. Grim Massage is pointless. Let's see. You can essentially add 6-inch range to everyone in the Dark Reaper squad. That's not particularly great, considering most of their weapons are already long range. But if you're going to,
charge?
if you're going to, for whatever reason, run shuriken cannons or any of their other shorter ranged options, I'm not really sure why you would, but if you were going to,
that's not bad.
6 extra inches to all of those is pretty good. Deadly Touch on a 6 to wound from the Exarch, it's 2 mortal wounds in addition. And then probably the most head scratching one that I think might be a bit much, but it could also be irrelevant. If your opponent knows you have it, it's probably less important, or less.
So it has to be a surprise.
Well, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. You can't surprise someone because they can note it, but it's more of a gotcha thing if they don't understand what it does. It's focused fire. The Exarch can actually basically target a character.
Wow.
Within 18 inches. So you can't, if you're 24, way the hell away, or 18.1 inches away, he can't shoot you. But if you're within 18 inches, he can essentially
ignore everyone else closer. And
he can basically shoot a last cannon at your face, which
that's
I'm not sure that's reasonable considering they hit on 3s, no matter what. That seems a bit much to me to be able to target a character.
Wasn't Eldar, hurting for stuff before?
Yeah, no.
That's I know.
Howling Banshees have a couple interesting ones, but I'm not sure it's quite enough to get you in there. Yeah. Where is it? The Howling Banshee Exarch actually has some choices. We have Disarming Strike, where you can choose one model and it loses 2 attacks. That's reasonable. If you can manage to get her in there on a character, for example, it could help another character win a fight.
Yeah.
And then, let's see. There's one more. Oh, and then on the charge on a 4-up, if you take this Exarch power on a charge when the unit finishes within 1 inch of a unit, roll a d6, and on a 4-up, it takes d3 mortal wounds. So it's sort of a smite on the charge. That's okay. On a 4-up, though, it's not guaranteed. I don't see this being good enough to make Banshees in there, but it's interesting. Swooping Hawks, I mean, their problems are probably more than this could fix.
Ever fix.
Well, not ever, but I don't think the Exarchs alone are quite enough to fix this. They have a couple interesting ones. There's one that when they overwatch, the enemy has to subtract 2 from their charge. That's okay.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, you can make his... Any weapon the Exarch has, it becomes Assault 6.
Wow.
For any ranged weapon. Yeah, there's a couple okay ones, but I'm not sure that's going to be enough to make Swooping Hawks return, but it might. It's close. Shining Spears got obviously some ones. You can give your Shining Spear Exarch or 3-up invuln to ranged weapons. Yeah, you can add 1 to the charge rolls for the Shining Spears, which is obviously nice. And then if you take the Paragon Blade, which obviously it's strength 3, but it does let you reroll hits and wounds, so
that's good.
It probably is okay. But
yeah.
it makes this actually makes the Paragon Blade probably usable, if not really powerful, because it makes the damage 3 instead of 1. So essentially, it kind of becomes a character assassin at that point.
Mm-hmm. Shank.
Yeah. So yeah, it's and here's the biggest one to me that's problematic is Crimson Hunter Exarch getting additional stuff. Like, was this really needed? Crimson Hunters were already a major part, very, very extremely powerful part of Eldar armies, and some of these choices are just these might be the best options out of all the Exarch powers.
Obviously, GW disagrees and thought.
So we're cover these here real quick, and because most of these are good, there's not really a bad option. Yeah, when you're making an attack with a ranged weapon against a unit that can fly, you get to add 1 to the damage characteristic.
Okay.
Obviously, good. You can give them a 5-up invuln. Good. Then this one is a really big deal to me. Hawkeye, the model does not suffer penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons. All of their weapons are heavy. And since the Crimson Hunter Exarch hits on 2s, basically they're shooting lances and their other weapons all on 2s, and they're all like strength 8 guns at AP -3.
They were all just beefing up for this single power.
Yeah, that one's ridiculous to me.
That's really strong.
Strafing Assault, you can reroll. Wait, hold on. Reroll wounds of 1, or against anything that can't fly. You can also make it where it ignores cover, where they get to ignore cover. And there's one final one where instead of moving 90 degrees before they move, they can fully 180.
Okay.
So basically, they have full.
They can spin and hit
they have absolute full range of movement to turn wherever they want before they move. So there's actually 0 way to make them fly off the edge, which is already really hard to do to Eldar flyers. It was pretty hard to just deny them a spot. But this makes it actually impossible because your opponent can just turn in whatever way they want and then fly. So yeah, that'll bring us. Like I said, that's all really good stuff. I don't know. I don't know why you look at a unit like Crimson Hunters and be like,
They need more.
These totally need improved. So at the very least, all the Eldar players will be using that. Next, we're looking at the new psychic powers, Faithful Divergence. Essentially, it's for a Warp Charge 4, you can give a unit a reroll
War
a free
Charge
reroll.
4?
Yeah, these are actually all...
What?
Oh, no, one. Okay, so there's a couple that are 6. A lot of these are 4. So 4 is like a freebie, obviously.
Obviously. What the... Okay.
This one's an interesting one to me, Witch Strike. I actually think you might see this used because it turns your Fire Seers into potential assassins at any given moment. So like I said, Witch Strike sort of makes your character, or Fire Seer, into a pseudo-assassin. Obviously, he's only 2 attacks, but...
How hard do they hit?
Yeah, they gain +2 damage to their
Okay.
to their abilities, and Farseers already hit on 2s. If they're using the Witchblade, wound on 2s, and D3 damage, which makes each attack potentially 5 damage.
Wow.
Yeah, obviously there's no AP on the Witchblade, but
That's still a lot of damage.
Yeah,
to
I mean,
save.
let's say you're hitting a Smash Captain, right? They don't care about your AP anyways, so I mean, they could easily one-shot a Smash Captain.
Yeah.
And that's a Warp Charge 4. So that's, yeah. Obviously, you can't put this on another character. This is only on the caster. But that seems quite strong on a unit that hits on 2s and wounds on 2s. Ghost Walk essentially gives you plus... what is it? Yeah, 2 to the charge roll until the next psychic phase on a unit within 6 inches of the psyker. So it's a close range thing, but... +2 charge roll is quite nice. Obviously, if you pair that, you might be able to find a use for your melee guys.
Not only that, but it'll be combined with the previous power because you'll have the Psyker in there.
Yeah, and then there's also a +1 charge roll for if you want to customize Craft World stuff. So if you took that plus Ghost Walk, your charges are +3 inches.
Jeez.
I mean, that combine that with coming out of the Webway with that stratagem with a group of Banshees and Farseer to cast. You got +3 inch on your charge, so you're looking at instead of a 9 inch, a 6 inch charge, which is completely it's completely makeable. Next, Crushing Orb. You can target a character with this, Warp Charge 4. You roll 3 dice, and on a 5-up, for each 5-up, the character takes a mortal wound.
Okay.
Sort of a targeted smite type effect. Obviously, lower chance than smite, but it's Warp Charge 4, it's okay. Focus Will, Warp Charge 6, until the end of the psychic phase, until the end of this phase, when Deny the Witch test is taken. Or, I'm sorry. Well, if manifested, select a friendly psyker within 6 inches of the spiker. This makes 0 sense. I think it's supposed to work that your opponent, if they want to deny the witch on an ability, they have to roll 2 higher, essentially.
Huh.
It's just worded really weird. I probably need an FAQ, but I'm pretty sure that was the intent with this wording. Impair Senses, this one's interesting-ish. A model can only target the closest enemy unit. You put this on an enemy within 18 inches, one enemy within 18 inches until the start of the next psychic phase. The unit chosen to shoot with, when the unit's chosen to shoot with, models in the unit can only target the closest visible enemy unit unless the target of the attack is within 18 inches of the shooting model. It's interesting, but you have to be within 18 inches to use it anyways.
Yeah.
Which means if you're within 18 inches, they're either going to be able to target the character that cast it, or they're going to be, I don't know.
Not helpful.
You might be able to combine it with some of the other stuff shenanigans you can do, but I don't know, because it has to be even visible to the character. It's an interesting ability, but at 18-inch range, it's of debatable usefulness, but we'll see. Craft World attributes, I'm not going to talk about all these. There's a lot, and there's a fair amount of decent ones. At the end of the day, though, I think for most people, it's just going to be a question of, is this better than a Lightalk? And probably the answer is no, in any combination. There's some interesting stuff you can do, but generally speaking, -1 hit's probably better.
Yeah.
So yeah. Our touch on a couple of the more interesting ones to me. Army-wide 6-up invuln. You can't roll a 1 on a psychic test. It counts as a 2, although I believe a Perils is an unmodified double one, so you would still take Perils over roll double one. It's just you could take Perils and manifest a Warp Charge 4 ability at the same time. Which would be kind of funny. So yeah, if you had Children of Prophecy, it's actually functionally impossible to fail any of those Warp Charge 4 abilities, which is kind of interesting, I guess, if you really wanted to use those. Children of Morai Heg. Let's see. Did I get that one right? Nah, never mind. That's not what I thought. Children of Cain. When you're attacking with a melee weapon of Aspect Warrior, 6 is a +1 to the damage characteristic. It's okay. Again, for your Banshees, if you're really dead set on Banshees, that one's a decent one, I guess, because it makes their weapons possibly one-shot Primaris.
Okay.
Possibly. I mean, it's a 17% chance, basically.
But that is possible.
Right.
It's not 0.
It is not 0. Hail of Doom is probably one of the ones that I'm betting people will like. Any shuriken weapon that is shot at a model within 12 inches, which if you're using Guardian shuriken weapons, that is 12 inches anyways. It becomes AP -1. It doesn't affect the ability of the shuriken weapon. In other words, the shuriken weapon doesn't become AP -4 if you roll a 6 to wound. It just still is AP -3. So it makes it just better most of the time, and then occasionally instead of getting bonus AP3, it's AP -2 in addition, which again, it's not a negative in any way. It's just you get part of it just makes it better, essentially. Expert Crafters, it's Salamander Chapter Tactic. Reroll a hit and a wound out of every unit that
Darn
attacks.
Xenos.
Yeah, whenever a unit shoots, overwatches, or fights. I mean, obviously that's quite nice depending on what shooting, because you obviously lances and things like that out of the Guardian squad, getting rerolls on that is nice. Although with all the psychic buffs that you can do with Eldar, it may be slightly less important, but every little bit helps, you know. Plus, there's, like I said before, there's a +1 to the charge roll.
Yeah.
That one's pretty, obviously Eldar aren't exactly the best close combat army, but if you were dead set on making it, you could do Headstrong, and that would at least help. And obviously that helped things like Wraith Blades and things like that as well. Let's see, you can add 1 to the attack characteristic of any unit within 3 inches of objectives. Okay. Let's see, Guardians get a reroll hits of 1. That's alright. Ignore cover. You gain cover if you're outside of 12 inches. Potentially good. It lets some of your longer range vehicles take 2-up saves. All game,
That's pretty good.
essentially. So that there's that. That one's actually pretty neat, pretty nice, assuming your opponent doesn't have Ignore's cover. One where vehicles automatically regain a lost wound every turn.
That sucks. I don't like that.
It's only 1. It's not.
At least it's not like the AdMac.
I mean, yeah, it's meh. It's kind of it's all right, but I could see
maybe
maybe a mechanized Eldar list at trying that. Not that those are Superior Shurikens. This one's actually decent at 4-inch range to all Shuriken weapons, and that's including catapults, pistols, Avengers, cannons, etc. It even says Scorpion Claw shooting, and any weapon that replaces a Shuriken weapon, so relics too. Including pistols, obviously, so you get 16-inch Shuriken pistols or 22-inch Dire Avenger rifles, which again, that's
not bad.
If you're interested in using Dire Avengers, that could help you with Superior
reason.
Shurikens, and if you combine that with the Hail of Doom, so if you do get within 12 inches, your Dire Avengers are AP -1, and I believe it's phrased as an extra AP. Oh no, it's just AP -1. Yeah. So it wouldn't help if you're running the Exarch power that lets him get AP -3. But anyway, Webway Warriors lets you get an extra use of Webway Strike stratagem instead of only 1 use. Wrath of the Dead, reroll 1s to wound for any Wraith units. That's okay. But again, with psychic powers for Eldar in the first place, you probably don't need it. But again, you might. Who knows? Warding runes. This one's actually decent as well, assuming you're fighting a lot of other Psychers. Although Eldar usually brings so many Psychers, you're probably able to deny most of this. But in any case, it's 5-hit feel no pain, specifically to mortal wounds.
Dang it.
And yeah, that's
the Eldar?
That's most of their stuff. As I said, we didn't go too into depth into that, but we don't know enough of. I don't know enough about Eldar. And
I don't play
Eldar.
I play against Dark Eldar.
And Harleys. Yeah, we play Dark Eldar. Or I play Dark Eldar and Harleys, so we know about those a lot better. So we're going to probably spend more time on these. So, Dark Eldar, points-wise, nothing really changed. I do think Demiclaves used to cost points to give to the Clivex, and now they're free, so there's that.
Oh, that's a minor buff.
I think. I don't remember, because honestly, you don't run Incubi, because they aren't very good. And to be honest, this isn't going to really change your opinion of them. If you didn't run them before,
you're not going to run
them now. If you ran them before because you occasionally just felt like it, like I sometimes do, that's usually when I run them, is I'm like, I just want to get them on the table because I like them.
You're probably going to want to
repeat
that.
Well, no. I mean, they didn't get made worse or anything.
Oh, okay, good.
If anything, they're a little better. They just still, I mean, it's hard to justify paying 80 points. It's essentially the same price as you would pay for a veteran Marine with Power Sword.
Or 40.
Well, a single, I mean, per model, it's roughly the same cost. Slightly more for a veteran, but veteran with Power Sword, I think is 17 points, and these guys are 16. But for that 1 point, you're getting toughness 4, and you have a gun, whereas these guys don't have a gun. And yeah, they're functionally the same amount of attacks, at least in the first round of combat, and the same strength. And
jeez,
you could argue that the Incubi are slightly better at mulching hordes just because of the Demiclave buff, but I don't see it. Incubi, like I said, they're fun, but not particularly great. They did though make Drazar better, which makes Incubi much more functional. So if you're intending to use Incubi, you're probably going to want Drazar. So I just sort of think, yeah, if you're going to bring the Incubi, he sort of becomes an auto take just because of how he acts. The main thing they did to him is I believe they gave him an extra attack. No, they gave him an extra wound, sorry. So they gave him an extra wound, and then the big thing is they changed his Master Blades. It used to be reroll, or I think it was add 1 to wound, hit rolls, which for Dark Eldar basically becomes useless after turn 3.
Yeah, because you already have that the longer you live.
Yeah, exactly. On turn 3, we already get +1. So, and in that Incubi already hit on 3s, and the Clivex already hit on 2s. It was kind of crappy. So now it's +1 to wound roll, which is a lot better, because everything I was just kind of complaining a little bit about Incubi and them having trouble wounding things, just that solves a lot of the problems.
That's true.
I mean, it lets them even wound a Land Raider on a 5, or a obviously slightly less good thing, like a Rhino on 4s, or so they could technically attack an Armiger and actually have an okay chance to take it out, especially if Drazar's there. So yeah, lethal. They did. Drazar especially they also improved the damage characteristic on his weapons. This makes them a lot better as far as as far as actually killing characters go. And of course, obviously, if he charges, he gets to fight twice. I kind of wish they'd just given this the whole Space Marine treatment. If he charges, is charged, or heroically intervenes, he gets to make an extra attack that turn. The fact that it gets limited to specifically if he charges
one situation,
right? It makes it pretty easy for a lot of armies to say I can deny you, or if you roll bad, and he just becomes useless at that point. So he is strength 4 though, which means in melee he is strength 5, which also means, of course, even against a knight, he's able to wound on 4s.
Wow! Because
he gets to add 1 to the wound roll, and getting wounding on 4s at AP -3 with 2 damage a hit. And if you roll a 6 to wound, wound roll of 6, add 2 to the damage characteristic.
Wow.
So that would essentially be a 4 damage attack at AP -3.
That's pretty good.
He's probably dead very quickly thereafter, but
at least he got, damage as he punched something.
Yeah, and that's what but obviously that's not a great use of him to fight a knight, but it's just kind of a comparison's sake. Obviously against a smash captain or something, he's much more scarier because he's going to be wounding them on 2s instead, and assuming he survives the smash captain, which isn't highly likely, but he's got 6 wounds.
Might be possible.
And with this Feel No Pain, the smash captain statistically should need to get 3 through, and he's got a 5-up invuln, so I don't know. We'll see. He's not the worst anymore. He's certainly functional. And if you're going to bring him, you're going to bring Incubi. Incubi
just kind of goes with the territory.
Yeah, Incubi, the one thing, like I said, they got the Demi-Clays for free now, which I think, it used to be like a few points. And then they have the same lethal precision roll, which is on a 6. It adds 2 damage to the characteristic, but their normal claves are 1 damage. I don't, if they're going to improve his claves, why not just make theirs AP minus or 2 damage as well? But it seems like that at least gives them a role in the Dark Eldar army of being, I'm here to kill Primaris, or 2 damage, basically
2
tougher
wounds,
things.
Yeah.
But they didn't. So nothing stat line changed. There's basically vets with power swords and no gun, and their toughness 3. All right. So that we're coming to the obsessions. Oh God, these are such a mixed bag.
I laugh at a short and fraud on some of these.
The Cabal ones especially are terrible. But
oh man,
before we go into these, we're talking about, and I should have mentioned this in the Eldar part as well. Both for Eldar and Dark Eldar, the create your own whatever does not functionally work like the successor chapters from Marines. Basically, Marines can pick whatever the tactics they so choose, and then say, "I'm a successor of this," and then they get all the stratagems in the supplement books, as well as access to different relics, and for one command point can even take the special relics from the chapter they're successor of.
By the way, spoiler alert, someone's gonna get some Space Marines sometime.
Yeah, so we can, Alian's decided that she wants to start collecting salamanders, so.
They're the nice guys!
Yeah, nice guys with flamers and meltas.
They go well with my sisters.
Yeah. In any case, but yeah, so that's an important point with these. By taking one of these custom ones, you lose out on the special relic, the special stratagem, the warlord trait. You don't get any of that if you make your own custom version of either Craft World stuff or Dark Eldar stuff. And that is a pretty big deal for certain things. Obviously, for other things, not a big deal at all. But it's important to remember that with some of these, obviously, there's going to be still reasons to never play the custom ones. And on that note, we're looking at Cabal obsessions because they're terrible. These really, to me, read like someone just threw a bunch of Space Marine tactics on the wall and threw darts at them, and they're like, yeah, that'll work.
That'll work for Cabal.
Whoever designed these has zero understanding of Dark Eldar, Cabal especially. And
tell us how you really feel, babe.
Yeah. Whoever designed these, zero understanding. Sorry, dogs. But yeah, definitely no understanding of how Dark Eldar, especially Cabal, work. No understanding of the fact that you have to give up the stratagems. They're bad. There's no other way to put it. There's a couple that maybe have merit, but I'll talk about those when we hit them. Dark Mirth. Subtract 1 from the leadership characteristic of any enemy units within 6 inches of your units. When they have... if you take this obsession. The first time an enemy unit fails a morale test, for the rest of the match, you get +1 leadership.
Yeah, not only that, but do you really want to be within 6 inches?
I mean, you
Cabal?
have fringe practices of I can shove witches in a Cabal venom, but leadership shenanigans have been just always terrible in 8th. and trying to, especially because for 2 command points, 2 command points are like, oh, you did all this, cool, you did all these neat setups, well, I'm immune to morale. Too bad. Even the final benefit is like, oh, if they throw a morale test, you get +1 leadership. Cool. We have one unit that benefits from that as Cabalites. And let's be honest, you're not going to take a 20-man foot slugging unit of Cabalites ever. So this is terrible. It's head-scratchingly bad.
We're starting off strong, folks.
It's head-scratchingly bad, and this isn't even the worst one on here.
Starting off strong.
Yeah. Deadly Deceivers, units of this obsession can charge in a turn in which they fell back. When an enemy unit finishes a charge within 1 inch of them, roll a d6. On a 6, they take a mortal wound. So, if they charge you, you have a 17% chance to cause a mortal wound. Yay. But that's not all. We get to charge them if we fall back. Because that's what Cabal does. We're all about melee. Oh, that's so... What?
You're better than the Tau.
What the fuck?
Right?
What the actual fuck? Who made this? Why would you give... The first 2 are about being in close range with Cabal. What? They're the ranged faction. They all only do ranged things. What the...
Well, now they can try and do melee
But
things.
the fallback and charge, like, why would I ever want to do that? I guess the Archon maybe fringe benefit.
So is it just charge?
It's
You can't
bad.
do anything else? You can't fall back and shoot?
Nope, can't fall back and shoot. Just charge.
Well, that's useless, isn't it?
I mean,
that's crap.
Again, fringe benefit. You could do that with a Venom. You could charge in, tie something up, then you can fall back, still shoot, and charge something else. But the scenarios in which that's useful is so limited.
Yeah.
No.
That's
and as
not
you're going to see
good.
as we go further on, there's much better obsessions for Venoms, and they're not in Cabal. Disdain for lesser beings. I love the title and I love the idea of this, but it just does not belong in Cabal. When a morale test is taken, no more than one model can flee. Basically, this is half of the obsession that I believe of the witch cult of the Cursed Blade gets, which is only 1 model can ever flee. It works for witches, not so much for Cabal, because again, you're not going to put a 20-man unit of Cabal on there. Like, you're just not. And even if you were like, oh, well, that sort of works with Dark Mirth, but it doesn't, because if you're adding 1 to leadership, who cares? Only one runs away anyway, so that Dark Mirth doesn't even pair with that. It's just... So we have 2 leadership shenanigans things and 2 things with melee.
Charging.
On a faction that has 1 unit that cares about morale, we have 2 things about morale. And for the same faction that does nothing in melee, we have 2 things about melee. In the first 3. This is terrible. It's bad.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah, there we go. Then now we have Meticulous Flayers, which probably is actually the single worst one of any obsession. This is probably the single worst chapter tactic type ability I have ever seen. And yeah.
How much flaying does a Cabalite do anyways?
Units with this obsession with power from pain, so this doesn't even work with Venoms. This only works with the Archons and Cabalites. That's it. That's well, okay, Medusae and Lamaean, like some of your Court of the Archon lackeys, but who the hell runs those? They're not characters, so they just get shot, and even if they were, they're terrible. No one would still run them. But yeah, Meticulous Players. You get the units of this obsession with power from pain always get Eager to Flay. For those unfamiliar, Eager to Flay is the turn 2 power from pain ability. So this gives you 1 turn early, Eager to Flay, which is +1 to charge in advance rolls. Or no, not even +1. It's reroll charge in advance rolls. You can't use this on the Venoms because they don't have power from pain.
What's the average range of a gun of the Cabalites?
Yeah, it's 24. So I mean, there's shorter range, but they're going to be in a goddamn Venom.
Exactly.
Which doesn't get this.
Nope.
And even if it did, it wouldn't be great because their weapons are rapid fire, so you wouldn't be able to fire them if you advance. It's so bad. So yeah, you get eager to play 1 round early for Cabal because we're all doing a bunch of turn 1 charges with our Cabal lights. Yep, this is going to make melee Cabal a thing. You got it. What the fuck? This is... Seriously. I can't understate how horrible this is. So anyways, we got another slight benefit. Yeah, we have another slight benefit to it. An unmodified 6 to hit automatically wounds.
Well, I mean...
In melee.
Ah, shit.
Yeah, and only if it's not a vehicle or Titanic. So you can't even use that against, like, charge a Rhino with your Cabal lights to try to just get lucky on a couple 6s to hit. Like, it's so...
So...
And this, again, as I said, the first part of this is reroll advances and charge in the first round. You're never charging anyone with Cabal lights in the first round, and if you are, you've probably already lost. So, I don't...
You're doing it because you want to tie up your opponent.
This is terrible. This is actually terrible. That is, without a doubt, the single worst chapter tactic I have ever seen. So, to recap, people, in our first 4 choices, we have 3 for Cabal that rely on being in close range and or melee, and 2 that are about morale, and we have 1 unit that actually cares about morale. And no one's going to run in big squads anyways, because they're 5-up saves.
Perfectly fair and balanced.
Oh, it's like...
And that the Cabalites...
Whoever wrote... Like, these are so bad. Whoever wrote these should feel ashamed of themselves. Like,
you don't need to take any of these, right?
No, I mean, no one will.
Well, there you go. No one will.
For reference, everyone is still going to keep using Flayed Skull or Blackheart or Obsidian Rose if you want the Shredders, or... You're never going to touch these because they're useless. We do have a few, at least to be fair, we're coming up on 3 that might actually see use, but the fact that you give up a relic, stratagems, and access to relic, stratagems, warlord traits, no one's going to take it anyways, but we're still discussing. Mobile Raiders, this is part of the benefit of Flayed Skull. Add 3-inch to the move characteristic of anything with fly. I mean, people like it-ish on Flayed Skull, but that's mostly because it's a fringe benefit. If that was the main thing Flayed Skull did, no one would really care. 3 inches on vehicles that already move 16 and 14 inches. Yeah.
That's a good point.
I mean, obviously 19 and 17 is like, oh wow, I got amazing mobility. Yeah, sure, but... with the range on your weapons and how mobile you already are, it's not like we needed more mobility. You're not going to say no to it, especially given your other choices, but it's okay. That's the best I can say for it. It's okay. Soul Bond, this is probably, in my opinion, the best choice. It's basically a better version of Blackheart's Feel No Pain on vehicles. Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you make an Inured to Suffering roll, you get a reroll 1, and units in the Obsession that don't have Power from Pain gain Inured to Suffering. So basically everything gains 6 up Feel No Pain, and you reroll 1s. It's okay.
That's pretty good.
I mean, it's reasonable. I mean, people are already running most vehicles as Blackheart Cabal, and this is a slightly better version, but again... The problem, you lose the stratagem, you lose rid of the living muse, you lose, like, it's just, there's no way even if you like this, unless you're running a flyer detachment, there's no way you run. Yeah, it's just, you can't deal with losing all the shit. And to be honest, all the flyer detachments are going to be run as Witch Cult anyways, which we'll talk about later. Well, yeah. Toxin Crafters, it's okay. I would say it's kind of on the poor end, but whatever. On a wound roll of 6 with a poison weapon, and it's unmodified wound roll of 6, which nothing adds to wound anyways. So this doesn't even let you make stinger pistols usable. Unmodified wound roll of 6, you add 1 to the damage characteristic of your poison weapon. And of course, because this was so powerful, they needed to specifically rule these out. Relics, or your artifacts of cruelty, are not affected by this. So if you bring a relic splinter pistol, it doesn't actually get the +1 damage on a 6 to wound.
You're not even
Why?
allowed to, you're not allowed to bring the relics, though.
This isn't even amazing. Well, no, you can't bring specific relics, which is there's one for each coven, or one for each cabal, cult, and coven.
Sorry.
So yeah, it's. I mean, it wasn't so powerful that I feel they needed to specifically exclude relics. I just don't understand that. It's pointless. And on top of that, I mean, all the poison weapons are 0 AP anyways, except for a couple relics, which, so what? The unmodified means you rule out splinter pistol or stinger pistols from being good when you already have to pay 5 points for those things. They're terrible. Yeah, I think for this to be allow people to consider this, unmodified 6 should get AP 1 and +2 damage. But the fact that this doesn't do anything other than 2 damage makes it kind of whatever. If your idea is like, oh, I can totally use this to kill Primaris, I mean, kind of, except for those Primaris are probably going to be in cover, so you're hoping that they fail 2-up saves against very specifically those sixes to wound that you rolled, and then they could save those.
Unmodified sixes.
Yeah, it's very to me. Some people have looked at it and go like, oh, that's decent. Like, not for what you lose. It's really not. You're not going to run Flayed Skull. You're not going to not run Flayed Skull for that, or Blackheart Cabal be able to take that. It's no. And then last one. If you like Webway shenanigans, this does let you use a Webway portal an additional time. So you could, if you want to spend 6 command points, you could have 4 things go through the Webway. Or alternatively, you could just run it twice. So you get a 1. Basically, most of the time this gets used, in my opinion, you get a 1 CP discount on getting two units to Deep Strike. But again, yay. Witch cults. This is really a mixed bag. Overall, they're terrible.
We're still going with the horribleness.
Yeah, this is going to be a running theme. But they're better than Cabals because they at least make sense.
So someone actually may have read about Witch Cult?
Maybe, but they didn't read the actual Codex. Coven and cult traits, because these are not on the same power level whatsoever.
Oh, yeah.
So first we have acrobatic display, which at first glance you're like, hey, I could use this to tar pit, or it's reasonable. Basically, you get to add 1 to your invuln save in melee. But important to note here, this is on a model per model basis.
Oh yeah. I remember this one.
For a model to get +1 to their invuln save, they have to be within 1 inch of an enemy unit on a model per model basis. So this means if, like, say these, you had 3 witches right here, and someone had 2 guys right here, and you killed off this guy, and then this guy right here on the end attacks, these witches that are over here will not get a 3-up invuln, which means you have to take your invuln saves 1 at a time. And only on the witch who's within an inch, which is going to be the one in base-to-base contact or close to it. So that means if you have a special weapon witch that you really don't want dead, you're never going to... That's the only one that gets a 3-up invuln. You're not going to be taking it on her. You're going to be taking it on the mooks with 4-up invulns anyways. Yeah. Very specifically where this, I guess, you see use is surrounding like a knight or a vehicle, like a dreadnought or something, that will punch, and all your people are going to be able to get 3-up invulns. So, I mean, it's still good at tar pitting big things.
But not.
3-up invuln is nice. But, yeah, whenever you have a rule that allows your opponent to circumvent it just by smart play, again, it's not a good thing. You rely, again, on your opponent being bad, and that's not a good place to be. In addition, Witch's big problem isn't melee. Witch's big problem is getting shot to pieces in the ranged. And this does nothing to help them with that. I don't know why they couldn't have just made this a +1 to your invuln save. Oh no, witches have 5 up invulns to range. The world is ending, and it's certain. And then at the end of this, they give it a. Oh right, and also any unit that doesn't have the invuln, at least in melee, gets a 6 up invuln. So that does apply to things like Hellions and Reavers.
Okay.
But I don't personally think that. I mean, no one's going to use Hellions anyways, and Reavers are, if you're going to use Reavers, you're going to be running Cult of Strife for the advance and charge. That's all there is to it. But the strangest thing about this is they act like this is so amazing. This is the only obsession you can choose.
What?
Yeah, so
you can't bundle up obsessions?
No, you can't pick a second obsession if you take that one. It's, don't get me wrong, it's okay. It's certainly not bad, and I can still see lists occasionally running this if all you're doing is bringing them to Tar Pit at night or some other big target. But
wow,
it's just kind of it's certainly not worth 2, especially when we look at the power level of the other obsessions, and then you look at what the actual cults and the codex got. It's not worth 2. I'm sure people will experiment with it, and it's very possible I'm wrong. I don't see it on a model per model basis in being within an inch to gain the +1 invuln save. It's next up, Art of Pain. This one is fringe usable, but again, it has the weird. It's trying to run the Blackheart Cabal thing where you get +1 on the power from Pain table, but it only applies if you're within 1 inch of an enemy model. So that means that's not going to help you on turn 1 charges because you don't have you don't get to reroll your charges for free. Obviously, you can use your own command point reroll, but
that may be a lot of command points to use.
Well, it's only 1, but I mean, yeah, it's in any case. But once you're in there, you get +1. So it's probably at its peak on turn 2. Because you could reroll your charge roll, and then once you're in there, you get a hit on 2s, which is a really good thing for witches. That's whenever you get a hit on 2s with witches, that's when they definitely hit their peak. But I don't know, it's okay. But the fact that it only applies whenever you're within 1 inch, that doesn't help you from shooting. Let's say you're in melee and you're like, oh, I'm immune to morale, and then they back up and you're no longer immune to morale.
Because not only that, but they can
and then they shoot you.
Shoot because if you're playing against Tau, they
or
fly.
Or a lot. I mean, they can just back up and shoot you with something else too.
Yeah.
And so many armies now have ways around that. Anyways, it's like this unit can back up and shoot. This unit, first stratagem.
Stratagem to back up and that's true.
Berserk Fugue. Basically, a 6 to hit is 2 hits. It's all right.
Wounds. Nothing to wounds?
There's another stratagem for that, or another obsession for that. But in their infinite wisdom, you can't combine them. Why?
What?
They aren't even that good. This isn't even that good. It's on a 6 to hit, you get an additional hit. And then the next one is Precise Killers. On a 6 to wound, the weapon gets an additional AP.
And you can't combine them.
Yeah, I don't really understand that.
It's like they're punishing you for playing Dark Eldar without a faction.
Even if you combined them, it's not amazing. It's okay if you're able to combine them, but it's certainly not like, oh my god, this is amazing. Even if you can combine them, most of the time you're better off taking +1 attack or +1 strength from Strife or Colt, or being able to advance and charge. Like, all 3 of those benefits are better. Slashing Impact. Whenever you charge an infantry, biker, or monster, every model that makes within 1 inch roll a d6, and on a 5 up, it's a mortal wound. I mean, this is reasonable, but let's be honest. Most of the time, you're only going to get 10, if optimistically in, which will net you 3, maybe 4 mortal wounds if you're lucky. It's okay. It's not setting the world on fire, but they limited, like, where this actually could have shined is against things like knights and be able to just run in and bomb rush it, but it only works on infantry, biker, and monster, so you can't even use it on vehicles so it just, I don't know, it's kind of whatever.
You can use it against a carny.
You could, but I mean, they'll probably be able to kill the carny anyways. I don't know. It's not great. It's okay, but I mean, you're probably better off taking Art of Pain or Berserk, Fugue, or Precise Killers. But since you can't combine Fugue and Precise Killers, you're probably going to see some people grab it, assuming they're trying to run a custom cult instead of just taking one of the better ones. But
yeah.
Next one, Stimulant Innervators. This is probably the worst option in cult. Hyperstim Backlash Stratagem, which for those who don't know is a 2 CP stratagem that doubles the effect of your drugs for your witches. So if you have +1 strength on them, they become +2, so they become strength 5. But at the end of all that, you roll a dice for every model, and on a 1, they die.
Overdose.
Yeah, basically they die. They overdose. This nice thing gives you the benefit of being able to do that for 1 CP instead of 2, at the cost of an accession. Yeah, my god, that's bad. It could be. This is a stratagem that almost never gets used in the first place. You just occasionally use it, and it's very situational. And having an obsession devoted to a very situational use one is, I don't know.
You don't find that fair and balanced?
It should be free. It should say the drug overdose is free, and you still wouldn't use this every chance you get because
you don't want to
kill off your witches when you're trying to tar pit something. It's just not worth it. Then we get to the one that's actually good, but not for the actual witches. This is what is going to make. Until I'm sure Games Workshop is going to look at this and go, "Oh, we don't like this because it doesn't affect the witches." Basically, if you're attacking a monster vehicle, you get to add 1 to wound if it has a wounds characteristic of 10 or more. Note that doesn't say melee. So while yes, this does help your witches can run in and wound a toughness 8 vehicle on 5s, or if they have a +1 to, if they have this +1 strength drug and a +1 strength weapon, they can wound it on 4s. Which even toughness 8 vehicle. So that's okay. But where this obviously shines is making your Void Raven and your Jet Razor Wings Witch Cult. Mm-hmm. And then your lances will get a wound almost anything on a 2, and from the Void Raven, and your disintegrators on your Razor Wings will be wounding even like a repulsor on 4s. Yeah, which is obviously solid. I have almost no doubt that Games Workshop is going to look at that and go, "Oh, we don't like that. That's too good," and it's actually not bad. So we're going to change that to be melee only or some nonsense, at which point that'll all go away. But if it doesn't,
we'll use it.
If it doesn't, then at least this provides a reasonable choice for your Airwing detachments if you aren't running them as Blackheart for the survival. And you'd rather focus on them killing than test a skill, which cult is good. The downside is there's no other good obsession. They're not even good. There's no other obsession that even affects them. Your range stuff. Everything else is concerned about being within 1 inch or in melee.
Oh, that's true.
So it's not gonna happen at all. Test a skill. It's good.
It's the only good one.
It's the only good one, and it will probably be nerfed because it's not craptastic like everything else in this book. The last one,
we're not a fan.
Trophy takers. If your opponent takes a morale test, and any models are destroyed with a melee weapon, they have to roll 2d6 and discard the lowest result. Yay! Terrible, bad. Bad. No other way to put that. It's just bad. All right, next up, Coven. There's actually some good stuff in Coven, which makes sense because it has to compete with Prophets of Flesh. When probably in most cases it still doesn't. But at least there's some reasons to experiment with this. There's actually some reasonable choices that you could look at and say, you know what, this is worth losing my 4 pinball. But yeah, with as big and slow as Coven units are, you generally need the survivability. That said, we'll cover these. The first is Artists of Flesh. This obsession, it has to be your only one if you choose it, And to be honest, it's actually good enough that you can make that argument. I'm okay with this. It's still fringe benefit. It just depends what you're trying to do, but it's okay. I believe statistically, I kind of roughly ran the numbers. It is actually better for Talos against last cannon level shooting.
Huh.
Barely. Not significantly enough to really matter if you're going to run anything else. Like, if you're trying to run Rax, it's certainly not worth losing the 4-up invuln on Rax just for your Talos to have a 15% better chance, or for the Talos to need 15% more last cannon shots at them to get a kill.
Oh, wow.
It's not worth that. But it's -1 to any damage that they take to a minimum of 1, so you can't zero it out.
Oh.
So obviously that makes it useless for something like Rax, because they only have 1 health anyways. However, this does apply to vehicles, which means you can have a Raider that's -1 damage to when you hit it, or a Venom, or... So that's actually some fringe use. If you're just trying to get something out there to survive, which... As anyone who's played Dark Eldar knows, that your vehicles, they're made of
paper,
of cardboard, basically.
Cardboard and paper, but they have beautiful guns.
Yes, they. This certainly gives them a little bit better chance to survive, and if they're Coven, you can also if you keep a Homunculus Ghost, they become higher toughness. Mm-hmm. So your Raiders and Venoms go to toughness 6. So that's nothing new, but. That was kind of before the only reason you'd ever run him as Coven, because Coven did nothing else for him. But this gives you a reasonable choice. So if you're going to run... I think generally if you're going to do this, you're probably going to run a Spearhead of like nothing but Talos, because they're the ones that benefit from this.
The most, yeah.
And then you're going to use that and run like 4 Venoms or some Raiders, probably more Venoms, but... and basically take dedicated transports for the 4 slots in the detachment that you have. So, yeah, it's actually pretty good for that. There's, weirdly enough, there's a lot of transport-oriented things here for the Coven. But yeah, it's good. I could see people doing this, especially if you're not running Rax. If you're running Rax, and possibly even Grotesques, you just nix this. You're not going to take it because Rax get no benefit from it, and you're much better off with Prophets of Flesh because you get Black Cornucopians plus a good relic plus it just again. But there's some uses. I think you might see people run this. Dark Harvest is the next one. Whenever you do a charge, basically it's like the cult one, except it's on anything, not just infantry, bikers, or monsters. Model that finishes... Oh, no, it's just a unit. Jesus, not even good. Yeah, after a unit finishes a charge on a 5-up, it does a mortal wound. So, again...
Just one unit?
Yeah.
Just the unit, not the models?
Yeah, so you get one roll. It's you're not going to take it.
Never mind.
Not even hardly worth mentioning it. Then we have Dark Technomancers. This one is actually interesting, especially with how it combines with the next one, specifically for Venoms. But this is also really good for Haywire on your Talos. Unit with this obsession, when it fires Overwatch or is chosen to shoot with, you can essentially choose to overcharge everything. If you do until the end of the turn, you get to add 1 to the wound roll. So it's not just +1 strength, it's add 1 to the wound roll. And you get to add 1, the weapon gains +1 damage. So that, as we noted, would let poison wound on 3s, because you're on 1 to the wound roll, and then the poison becomes 2 damage. That makes the Cabal one look like shit. Why is this not a Cabal option? This should be a Cabal option. The fact that it's not, I don't...
They just... Look,
this just should be a Cabal option.
Cabal will be a melee army now.
Yeah.
It will happen.
This should be a Cabal option, and then even then it'd be the only
Cabal melee will be a thing.
Yeah. So it's not a Cabal option; it's a Homunculus Coven option. You had 1 of the damage characteristic after all attacks. If you've rolled any wound rolls of 1 for the attacks, the model suffers a mortal wound of 1 after shooting. So. Basically, your Venom can shoot, and if it rolls a single... It works sort of like the Ghost Kill one when you overcharge. No matter how many 1s you roll, you can only take 1 mortal wound.
Ghost Q.
It's the same thing for this. It's 1 mortal wound. But, yeah, it's at the end of all the firing. So, yeah, it's alright. Obviously, if you're using this on a Venom that has no save because there's no power from pain on a homunculus Venom. But where this also shines is on Talos Haywires, as I said. This means on a 3 and a 4, you're getting a mortal wound instead of just 4s. It also means that the Haywire shot itself becomes 2 damage and AP -1, which is a lot more threatening to any vehicle. Mm-hmm. And it also means that even against toughness 8, you're wounding on 5s. And on 5s and 6s are D3 mortal wounds. So, like, this is fantastic if you're running a bunch of Haywire Talos. It is just amazing. And your Talos have 6 at Feel No Pain, so they have a chance to ignore any ones they, ignore a mortal wound. So there's all that, and of course if you have homunculus, you can always repair your Talos as well.
Oh, dang it. I hate the repairing stuff.
Next, experimental creations, and this dovetails extremely nicely with Technomancers and Talos in general. Add 1 to the strength characteristic of any models in this obsession. Most models are poison weapons unless they're Talos or Kronos. So kind of whatever. However, but I mean, obviously it's really good for Talos. It essentially does what Urian does, but for your entire army, so you don't have to have Urian following your Talos around. Mm-hmm. Then it does this other nice thing, which if when attacking with a poison weapon and a model with this obsession has lower toughness, or against a unit that has lower toughness, then you get to add 1 to your poison weapon roll. So bearing in mind that you can have a homunculus buff your Venoms. So your Venoms can run around at toughness 6. That means bikers and worse all would be +1 to wound. And then you Dark Technomancer it. You now have potentially 12 poison shots if you run double cannons that hit on 3s, wound on 2s, and are 2 damage.
That's not... No.
That's on a 75-point model if you buy the second cannon. If you don't, then you got to be within 12 inches and it's 10 shots. And it's 65 points instead. But, yeah, I mean, that's obviously good.
Yes.
And again, makes your Talos hit a little bit harder. So
make your Talos scarier.
Yeah. So, yeah, like I said, that essentially... This wouldn't surprise me to see people just run a bunch of Venoms with Dark Technomancer, Experimental Creations, and then just try to wipe people out. If you got 6 Venoms in there, which would be a little bit hard, but you could do it. If you're willing to run a couple Sacrificial Rack units. And, run 6 Venoms. You'd have, 24, 36, 36 shots that hit on 3s, wound on 2s against anything that's toughness 5 or lower. That's
pretty good.
Solid. Very solid. Very solid. Whether or not at the end of the day all this is worth losing a 4 Pendulum, debatable. But at the very minimum, it's food for thought. Like, this actually competes with that, and the fact that I can actually say something competes with Prophets of Flesh is surprising. When I was going into this book before I saw it, my guess was that the covens would all be pointless because nothing is going to get me not to use Prophets of Flesh.
Except for the combination.
Well, I mean, I'm going to say at the time, I'm just saying I never would have thought I'd even consider using anything but Prophets of Flesh. But at least this gives food for thought. I actually thought we'd probably see some good Witch Cult and hopefully some good Cabal ones because none of them exactly were amazing in the first place.
Obviously, that did not happen.
Instead, it's the opposite. The Coven got stuff that actually make me consider not using the single best obsession in the game. So there's that. Master of Mutagens. This is when making a poison weapon. Resolving a poison attack against a... let me actually take a step back. The other interesting note is now you can give your homunculus, just give them all electrocorrosive whips. And the homunculus is T5, so as long as they're not fighting anything that's really high toughness, your homunculus will get a wound on 2s with electrocorrosive whip.
Jeez.
And it'll be a 3 damage per attack, and he has 5 attacks. Like, your homunculus just became a beast.
Yeah.
Couple that with giving him a nightmare doll, and he's got 4 up Feel No Pain, and rerolling ones. Like, that homunculus probably just became the best beat stick in your army.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that. Anyways, back to these Hungry for Flesh. Very simple one, just +1 to charge rolls. That's good. I don't know that. Again, I don't think that would ever make you not take profits. I mean, that's reasonable if you didn't want to take experimental creations or dark technomancers. You could throw in this instead. Master mutagens on a 6 to hit. Against not vehicle or titanic, you automatically hit and wound with a poison weapon.
Jeez.
But again, no relics. So
yeah.
Yeah, not super fantastic here. But, there is the upside. You could combine that with Dark Technomancers, and then you could actually essentially potentially skip some rolls for what could cause you mortal wounds, which is 1 to wound. Because it's not 1 to hit like Plasma, it's 1 to wound. So yeah, it's solid. Master Torturers. Torturer's Craft becomes 1 command point instead of 2. I mean, at least this is a reasonable stratagem. But let's be honest, Torturer's Craft should just be 1 command point anyways. And you have to use an obsession to make it what it should be.
So it's not really necessary.
Yeah, again, you're not going to drop Prophets of Flesh for that. And then last, Obsessive Collectors. This is almost certainly going to be FAQ'd. Because it says when an enemy model is destroyed as a result of an attack, and I'm pretty sure this should say when an enemy unit is destroyed when an attack, and that'll make sense here in a sec. By a melee weapon, you can select 1 model in that unit that killed the model to gain D3 lost wounds.
Jeez.
Or, if it's a rack, you can return up to D3 destroyed racks. So 1 model dies and you get D3 racks. I'm pretty positive it's supposed to be unit, but at least in the temporary, what this means is if you get a Talus into, say, a squad of guardsmen, even if it's a 1 wound, it's probably going back up to 7.
Yeah.
And if you've lost all of your racks except for 2 and you get them to a squad of guardsmen, they're probably going to go up to full strength as well. So, yeah, I mean, right now, that's actually quite good.
That's why it's going to be FAQ.
But it doesn't make sense thematically. It does that. Obviously, thematically, in terms of them healing and gaining numbers, that's cool. But on a per model basis, to gain D3, it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
I could be wrong. They could absolutely leave it, and if they do, it's at least worth the consideration. Probably combine for racks, combine it with Hungry for Flesh. But if you're running racks, again, I think you want that 4-up invuln. All right, last on to Ynnari. Really not going to talk too much about them. They're not particularly great. They were completely broken for a long time.
In 7th, yeah.
No, not even 7th and 8th.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, they were terrible. So, yeah, they're ridiculous. But they kind of, Games Workshop course corrected on this. And now they're just strictly worse than Dark Eldar, or Harlequins.
Oh, dear.
So, yeah, nothing they did in here is going to really fix that or change that. Obviously, if you're just running an RA because you want to, there is a little bit of improvement for you. Or if you just wanted to be able to field one of the units, because you can include Ynnari units in Eldar, Dark Eldar, Harlequins without making the detachment Ynnari. So there's that. The big changes, Vizark went down, I believe, 40 points to 80.
Okay.
Which, for what he is at 80 points, I mean, he's what, 4 points more than a Archon with an Agonizer. So if all you really wanted was the Archon to go beat something, and then he's a reasonable choice instead. He's better in combat than the Archon. So yeah, I don't know. He's okay. If you just need something, or he might be a reasonable choice if you're trying to get double Cabal. Because you can only have 3 Archons, so running the Vizark in there for slightly more points than a normal Archon is a reasonable choice. Yeah. It's cheaper than something like Jazzar, at least, which you normally have to run for double Cabal, but for double Cabal I'd be behind. Next, Incarn. That went down 57 points, I believe. I think it used to be 337. Now it's 280.
Oof.
So that's a significant.
That's a significant decrease.
Yeah. Much better than it was points wise. I believe it took a slight nerf, but it was pretty minor. I can't quite remember what it is off the top of my head, but yeah. More or less, he's everything you normally expect. At 280, he might actually get some play because he's this big threat that can literally appear at the end of your opponent's shooting phase. So they can't shoot anymore, and then they don't really want to charge him because that's what he wants, and then he'll be able to charge on your turn if you brought him in when your opponent killed something of yours that was closer to them. So there's some little tricks with him. 280 points, obviously that's hefty. He's got to do some work once he comes in.
Yeah, in order to make those points.
But at least, I think you could actually put him in your list without just actively making it worse now. Yvraine is also went down. I don't quite remember what she was at. I think she was like 132 or something weird. Now she's 115, so she's down a bit. For Dark Eldar players, that could be worth it if you just want to get a Psyker in there. You could run like Helm of Spite plus her and actually
a Psyker.
And actually be able to do a couple denies instead of just the one. Gives you some fighting chance if your meta has a lot of Psykers. And at 115 for a Psyker, and she's actually a pretty good Psyker, and she's actually quite reasonable in melee, not amazing or anything, but she can fight. Certainly not a Smash Captain, but something else. So yeah, she's reasonable at 115, I think. Stratagems and whatnot, as near as I can tell, and bearing in mind that I haven't followed Ynnari too much, and I haven't seen the White Dwarf at all. So this is, to me, all new. But from what I can tell and understand, it looks like more or less it's a reprint of White Dwarf for stratagems. They're not very good, in my opinion, the stratagems. They also nerfed the psychic power, which I'll get to in a second. Oh, I think the nerf to the Incarn that I was thinking about. They changed his starting Warlord trait, but you're never going to make the Incarn your Warlord anyways. But it is strictly worse than it used to be. Now it's whatever. It doesn't matter. You're not gonna make him anyways. But it used to be the +1 strength and attack, and if he was benefiting. In any case, these are. I'm not even going to go over them. Most of them are overcosted. A lot of them have to do with leadership stuff, which, whatever.
Especially in A.
Yeah, so it's... There's a couple that, like, if you kill, I think, an enemy warlord or something, or character, that you get strength from death for the rest of the game. Where's that one? Souls of the Strongest. Yeah, if you kill the enemy warlord for 1 CP until the end of the battle, you get strength from death all the time, which is the always fights first, and if you're already going to fight first, then +1 to attack roll, or +1 to weapon skill. So, that's good, but the rest are all kind of I mean, there's a 2 command point on a 4... 2 command point, and on a 4-up, your character doesn't die. It comes back with D3 mortal wound or D3 wounds. But overall, it's mostly just a reprint of what is in the normal Eldar and Dark Eldar. Like the general Eldari
book.
No, general Eldari stratagems. Like there's ones that are shared between Dark Eldar and Eldar, and Harlequins, and they're all shared. And that's mostly what these are. And then the ones that aren't are kind of whatever. There's with a couple minor exceptions. Warlord traits mostly unchanged. I don't really see a need to talk about them. Revenant discipline. This is the one thing that was changed, and I don't know why. They changed Word of Phoenix. Used to, I believe, you would heal D3 wounds, and if everything was healed, you'd return a model with 1 wound, which is fine for Warp Charge 5. You're only getting 1 model back, whatever. Yeah. And it only comes back with 1 wound. Now, instead, if you get this off on a unit that can't be healed, like it's at full wounds, it's only a 50-50 chance to get back up one model at one wound. Like,
why bother?
yeah, it's just, why 50-50? Like, why do... You're already having to pass the psychic test. Why do I need a coin flip to get a 50-50 chance to get a single model? Like, I don't know. I just think Games Workshop is extremely afraid of making Ynnari any good after how broken they were. Mm-hmm. So they're just horrified of of giving them anything, which is understandable because you're able to cherry pick as Ynnari. So minor things can just set you up to be ridiculous, but I mean, Games Workshop hammered them, like absolutely hammered them with the Nerf bat. So I think you can afford to give them something here.
Nah.
But
just like they couldn't afford to give melee Cabalites.
We gotta. Well, you know what? Games Workshop they saw a hole, and correctly they saw a hole in Cabal-like gameplay and said, you know what? Those guys aren't any good in melee. Let's try to help them out.
By not making them actually good in melee and giving them chances to prove how terrible they are in melee.
It just, I don't know.
I personally, as a Tal player, would love to have, a session to go off at 6 inches from my enemy.
Yeah. Or get to reroll your charge rolls. Wouldn't you love that as Tal? Yeah.
Well, actually, maybe if I was like Farsight.
Anyways. That's probably going to do most of this. If you can't tell, I'm overall very unenthused by this book.
Yeah. I really don't have much of a dog in the fight since I just fight against Dark Eldar, and they didn't really go over anything Harlequins.
Eldar certainly benefits, if nothing else, from the Exarch stuff, and even if it doesn't make other aspects playable, people are already running Crimson Hunters, people are already running Dark Reapers, already running Shining Spears, so this just improves units that are already reasonable, and might be enough to bump some fringe units like Dire Avengers to seeing more use, which I'd be fine. That'd be cool. But as far as the Dark Eldar side, it's such a mixed bag. There's a couple interesting things, but
mixed bag. It was mostly like the only
for Coven.
Well, for Coven.
And then there's Witch Cult.
Already
there's Witch Cult, which
barely.
But the test of skill alone makes you can run an Airwing detachment of Witch Cult. But it's good enough to do it. That's what I'm saying. Like it's such a because the original cults there's nothing for any of your flyers, even though flyers.
Okay, that's fine. The issue that I'm having is that already it seems that the Coven, which was already strong, also got like maybe more things strong with it.
But you had to, otherwise no one would even consider running not Prophets of Flesh. That's what I said before. Like,
no, I understand
the Coven stuff had to be good, and to be honest, I actually think they probably hit the power level about right. Because
and then they screwed over everyone else.
Yeah, but I mean, with the Coven, at least I give them credit. They hit the power level of those about right, where it's just good enough that it makes you go, I could see running not Prophets of Flesh, without being so good that you're like, I'm not running Prophets of Flesh. I think with Coven, you're actually going to see some variance. Some people will run, a lot of people I'm sure will still run Prophets of Flesh, but I think you're also going to see a lot of people experimenting with Technomancers, with all that other stuff. And you're going to see Witch Cult Airwing detachments until Games Workshop decides that, oh no, this is only melee, and then at which point everyone goes back to running them as Blackheart.
But then so does that mean that you'll be making a squad of melee Cabalites?
No.
Okay.
No. Cabalites have long had on their leader the ability to bring an Agonizer, and it's always been laughably bad. There's no reason you would ever do that. And having the opportunity to a higher chance to make turn 1 charges with my Cabalites doesn't exactly make me interested in still bringing an Agonizer. So, yeah, it's...
Fair enough.
But what I mean is a mixed bag. The Cabal is actual garbage. Whoever created these just had no interest in making anything good. They basically shit on a page, and that's what they sent. That's what it was.
Damn.
It was bad.
Ouch.
The witch cult is mediocre. Again, I can't see in general, if you're actually running the witch stuff, giving up the advanced plus charge or +1 strength or +1 attacks. Like, all of those are just much better than any combination you can make here, unless you're intending to run a bunch of flyers and or raiders as witch cult to get that +1 to wound against vehicles. But that is the only way witch cult happens. And then coven, you might see some stuff. The biggest problem with the coven shenanigans is at the end you're still only talking about 12 shots per venom.
True.
And every time they're going to do it, statistically, they're going to hurt themselves with no way to save. So all your firepower is going to just slowly degrade on top of whatever your opponent's shooting at it.
But Dark Eldar like pain.
Yeah. I don't know. It wouldn't surprise me if Dark Technomancers, with the exception of the Haywire stuff, combining with experimental creations is eventually kind of considered not worth it. But I certainly can't look at that and say, oh, it's bad. It equally could be found like, oh, this is so good, all the tournaments are going to run it too. I can't quite tell. But that's a good place to be, I think. Because right now, if you're running Coven, the Prophets of Flesh, at least this
gives some variance
to it. And like I said, I think you're also certainly going to see the Artists of Flesh, because people are going to be like, you know what, I just want my shit to live.
Yeah.
To run a detachment of Talos, because they are statistically more survivable with that than the 4-up Invuln. Barely. And take that -1 to wound on all your Venoms and Raiders, or -1 to damage on all your Venoms and Raiders. And that's, generally speaking, probably better than the Feel No Pain rerolling ones.
Yeah.
Not massively so, but probably, I would guess, enough that it's worth doing. But yeah, I don't have too much more to add on it.
No, I really don't have anything.
It's kind of an overall disappointing book with a couple minor highlights, and that's kind of what I got to say about it.
Yeah.
Fuck whoever made the Cabal rules.
We don't like you.
No.
How dare you?
Yeah, so if you guys enjoyed this
rant and ravings, please like and subscribe. And we're hoping for better things in the Phoenix?
Blood of the Phoenix.
Blood of the Phoenix.
That'll be going up here very shortly with the fluff.
But so we're hoping for good things there.
If we had to currently talk about it, it'd basically be more of this, us ranting about how bad it is, but
nothing happens.
Nothing happens. Yeah. So hopefully, the Blood of the Phoenix fixes that a little bit. We're still
just more detail.
We're still gonna bitch about the book in general in that future video. It's just hopefully it would be nice to have some interesting topics as opposed to what the hell were you doing?
This is bad, and this is why you should feel bad for making this bad thing.
Yeah.
We hope to do more than that, because generally speaking, we're optimistic, positive people.
Yeah. No, I generally try to look on the right side, and that's the reason, as I said, with the Cult, at least you got test of skill, and with Coven, you have choices, but
the Cabal, you have
the
nothing.
Cabal is, like I said, that it's the single worst set of rules I have ever seen. Oh, it's bad. But yeah. Anyways, as we said, if you guys enjoy these, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Till then, take care.
Bye-bye.